Give me a thumbs up if you are at finished or are close to being done. You're pretty close to it. All right. I'm going to start. I know some people are already done. I'm going to start going into this next part anyways. This is just brainstorming. So if you're still filling out the chart, go right ahead. You don't need to write for this next portion of class anyways. So, issue number 1 with the Articles of Confederation, one of the reasons why it was weak, is there was no chief executive, all right? Think of it this way. Imagine a school without a principal. What would the issue be with a school without a principal or vice principal? What would be a potential issue? Give me one, Christian.
There would be like attention, so the students wouldn't learn from.
Okay, there wouldn't be a system of punishment, right? Or discipline in that sense. Okay, every teacher would have their own set of rules. There wouldn't be any similarity between the teachers, though, right? What else might come up as a result? You effectively have no boss. I might not get paid as a teacher. Okay, you know what I mean? Who's going to handle that? Who's going to handle field trips? Who's going to handle grades? Who's going to handle talking to parents? So now let's think of that on a bigger scale. What might be the issue of having no president or single person on top of a country? What could happen then?
More crime.
Okay, so the laws may not get enforced as well.
You can't like get debt.
Okay, so it might be more difficult to get debt to be collected, potentially. Or think of it this way. When I say England or another country, quite often what comes into people's minds is the leader of that country. If I say England, who thought of immediately kind of the Queen, right? So very often we think of the head of state of a country. So if you don't have someone on top, you don't really have someone to unify the nation. Let's go ahead and look at a second problem with the Articles of Confederation. In order for a law to be created, you needed to get 9 out of 13 of the states to vote. Well, the former colonies, 13 colonies. What's the issue with that? Needing 2/3 majority instead of a basic, more than half majority. What's the issue with that? Needing 2/3 majority instead of just more than half. Which one is easier to get? It's much easier to get, let's say if we have a group of 10 people, it's easier to get 6 of them to agree instead of 7 or 8 of them, right? So what might be the problem then if you make it more difficult for laws to be passed? What's the issue with that?
Nothing. There's like less laws.
There'll be fewer laws getting passed. Why do we care? Why does that matter? Possibly. Or if there are any problems that arise, it'll be difficult to deal with them because it's harder to get a larger group of people to agree.
Yeah, if it's like laws aren't going to get passed, and especially in like a system like this, effectively most of the time, like when like trying to resolve issues, effectively nothing gets done.
Exactly. Well phrased. Taxes were a big problem for the colonists, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were very unhappy. Who remembers the phrase from the time period? Come on.
No taxation without
Representation. Very good. So the colonists were so upset about taxes, they said, all right, this new government that's in charge of all the 13 states, they cannot make taxes. Oh, no, it's okay. They can still get money. They have to go to the states and say, Massachusetts, could you give us some money? New Hampshire, could you please give us some money? Georgia, would you please give us some money? But what's the problem with that? Who has an idea what the problem with that might be? Instead of saying, Massachusetts, you have to give us money, they're saying, would you please give us some money? They can say no. And how often do you think they did?
Every time.
Let's put it this way. If there's someone asking for donations for a cause, a charity, are there lots of people that are going to say, no, I can't right now?
Yeah, probably.
Even though they could, right? And if they do, are they going to go and say, okay, here's my whole bank account? What are they going to do? They're going to say, here, have $1, right? So So the problem with this is, okay, here, government of the United States, here, have $1. Is that going to be able to afford an army?
No.
Is that going to be able to go and build roads, build hospitals,
No.
pay for the salaries of everyone in the government? No. It's a government without money. It doesn't work. Furthermore, there's no national army. Every state is like its own little country with its own little army. What's the problem with that? Go ahead.
They could like uprise against like the government, like take it over.
Okay, so perhaps anyways, a state could more easily rebel because they have their own little army, right?
If like they get into a war, then it's like some places may actually, use their armies, while some places won't.
So let's say war starts out between the states, the United States and Spain, and New England says we're not going to go to war, but the Middle and South do.
It's kind of awkward. Yeah.
Isn't that didn't they just lose 1/3 of their army that way?
Yeah.
How well are they going to do in that war?
Robbing that as well.
Exactly. So that's what part of what you want to consider as well, anyways, is that there's no real national defense. They're very vulnerable as a country for potential invasion. There's no federal court system. What would be the issue if there's no courts, for example? What would be the issue if there's no courts?
They can't like make decisions for like people who did something bad, like you can't put them in.
Okay, so in terms of if someone has broken a federal crime, a crime against all the states, there wouldn't be a system to do that. It'll be let's put it this way. Let's say I committed a crime in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Virginia. Well, which court do I go to?
Yeah.
The one you committed in.
Oh no, you see what I mean? But what if I committed I don't know, I stole a pencil in Massachusetts, but I killed someone in Virginia.
Yeah.
I stole the pencil first. Does that mean my case is in Massachusetts?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's why we have a system of federal courts. If you commit a high crime, anyways, a crime against basically the people of the entire United States, you go to a federal court, a higher level court.
Not to mention, okay, so also like depending on like where like since like there's no federal court, that means there's only like local courts.
Local and state, correct?
Yeah, local and state, which varies kind of based off like the intensity of like the state's laws.
And they may, for example, also look at people from, let's say, Virginia court might follow an entirely different set of laws. They might also have different opinions on how ruling should be done in sentencing. What's considered a fair punishment, what's considered too harsh of a punishment. So there's no equality.
Yeah.
You might get a year in jail in Massachusetts for murder. You might immediately be executed in Virginia for murder. There's no continuity there. All right. Consider this. Any amendments or changes to the Articles of Confederation. So we have many amendments to our Constitution that add on additional rules or rights that people have. If any of that wants to be done for the Articles of Confederation, all of the 13 states have to agree. That means everybody except little Rhode Island could say yes, and it doesn't happen. For example, let's say they want to go and make an amendment that says across all the states, everybody can have freedom of religion. And everybody except Georgia says yes, and it doesn't happen, all because of Georgia. Why Georgia? because I picked Georgia because it's on the bottom.
Oh, why?
Who owned Vermont?
Vermont did not exist. Vermont was a part of New York. Vermont was part of New York. They split off in maybe like around like 1810, something like that. Yes.
Like another, like this is just kind of like 9 out of 13, like.
Yes, exactly. Except this is actually worse. This is worse because this has to be unanimous, not 2/3. It has to be unanimous.
Yeah, like I said.
You have two more to look at. So, the legislative branch did not have the power to collect state debts owed to the national government. So think of it this way. Imagine if the national government, the one in DC that rules over all 50 states, said, Massachusetts, you can borrow $3 million. And they did that with every single state, but they have no system of going and making sure that those states pay back. Imagine if the bank said, oh, here, sure, donuts, you can borrow $1 million. In fact, everyone can borrow $1 million. But then the banks never go and actually collect the money. What's going to happen to the banks?
They're gonna go bankrupt.
If your banks go bankrupt, can we agree that your country's not doing very well?
Yeah.
Furthermore, it's not in this presentation. I want to make this aware. Every single state issued its own money. So if you wanted to go to New York and you're from Massachusetts, you'd have to switch from using New York dollars to Massachusetts bucks.
You messed that
It's
up.
exactly. Every single state acted like its own little country. That's what a confederation is.
Yeah, but the thing is, they all had like a big bunch.
And the last point I want to make is that there's no system to settle disputes between the states. For example, let's take the Connecticut River, okay? The Connecticut River touches several states. So because Vermont doesn't exist at the time, it would be touching both Connecticut and New York. Let's say New York is polluting the Connecticut River. Isn't that also going to affect Connecticut because the river also touches them? And so the problem is there's no system where the states can go and discuss and figure out how to solve this issue. So what might happen? You have infighting between the states. Since there's no way to go and solve issues between the states, you have a higher chance of a civil war, for example. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're going to do now, okay? The next several slides that I'm going to project are going to go and answer the next two questions, all right? The reasons why they did or did not include whatever the topic is that we've gone over, and then it's going to explain the problem that it caused because they did not include whatever it was. Please feel free to put the notes in your own words. Get through as many of them as we can today, and we'll do the rest tomorrow. So, for the first one, the fact that they had no chief executive, no president, no king. The reason that they didn't do that is because they were afraid that they were again going to have a tyrant. It would be like having a king again. So that would be what you would put down here in that first box. You can again put it in your own words. The states feared that having a strong central leader, one person on top, would result in a tyrant, kind of like a dictator, taking away people's rights. Logan, please put your head up. You need to fill this out. How could you have filled this out when we have not even done this? Please erase. Please erase all of that. No. That's 101. Please erase all of that.
I did put in my
Please erase all of them. Please erase the two boxes because that's incorrect information you have down. I want to make sure you get the correct information down. The problem with this is that there was then no clear leader to follow and lead the nation, to set the agenda. One of the president's jobs is to tell Congress what the important